Well, welcome everybody to another Monday Masterclass. And as always, feel free to just stop us as we go through this. Any questions you've got, we'll keep this really informal. This session is going to feel a little bit more theoretical than most, but I think you're going to find it helpful because it's going to be all about B2B versus B2C. And I got to tell you, every time I hear of a newfangled innovation method, it could have been lean startup, or it could be design thinking, it could be anything. The first thing I do is I run it through a filter in my head and I go, what is involved in that new method is appropriate for B2B, and what might not need to be upgraded or modified to make it appropriate for B2B? Because what I find is nobody is creating new innovation methods and tools and systems and approaches and thinking very much about B2B other than our little group here, right? So let me show you, first of all, something you can download that you might find helpful. If I go over here to the insights and I go over to the white paper section, we've got there, just a second from the top, a fairly new white paper called B2B versus B2C. Now that's what we're going to focus in on today. The white paper itself looks like this. And if we were to go through the white paper, there'd be a little bit of background here. I'm going to talk about this customer insight gap in a minute. And then what we would do is we'd get into like 12 different differences between B2B versus B2C. And as we get into the end of it, we talk more about the B2B index, which I'm also going to talk about. There's even a manual version. You can calculate your own B2B index, but you guys don't need to do that. We have a much slicker approach. So that is the white paper. You can get it out at that site. And I'll also show you a really easy URL you could use. But it's kind of hard going through a white paper. So what we're going to do, instead of boring you with a white paper, we're going to bore you with PowerPoint slides. How about that? So let me cover the essence of this with these PowerPoint slides. And then what we'll do is we're going to jump over to the B2B index and talk about that a little bit so you can see how B2B any one of your markets are. So let me go ahead. Before I get started, any questions on where we're going? Why did I sign up for this morning? Any questions at all before we get going here? Okay, so let's take a look at these 12 differences. Now, I'm going to start you off with something you've probably all seen. If you've ever been to a blueprinting workshop, you've seen these slides. Let me just kind of remind you. We're always talking about 5 of these differences. We talk about how if your customers were B2B conveyor belt users instead of B2C dress belt users, they would have more knowledge for all of these reasons. And we would say they have more interest because you can make them a hero at work, whereas the B2C folks got to pay them to come to a focus group. And we'd say, the objectivity is higher for a B2B for these reasons. And we'd say they can tell you what they want because they're in business to make money. So they can have foresight before they even see a prototype. And then finally we say, and the industry concentration is higher. In other words, there's not as many of them, and you can go out and reach them. And then we would talk about, well, why does this all matter? Well, it matters because they're able to help us and they're willing to help us design better products. They make rational, stable decisions. They can tell us before they see a prototype, and we can reach them, we can engage them. And so we say these are all wonderful advantages, but an advantage is no advantage until we take advantage of it. Does that whole shtick sound familiar to everybody? You're thinking, I've heard this guy say this stuff before. Okay, so now let's go into some new ground. That's all still true, but let's talk about what it means. And let's go from 5 differences to 12 differences, okay? Now, first of all, why is this important? So imagine you had a certainty scale, and you could say, what is my ability to understand customer needs? And at the very bottom, it's like, I have no idea. I'm guessing what they want. At the very top, it's like, I absolutely know what they want. Now, first, we're going to start over here in B2C. And we're going to say, how much do you really know about a phone, user's needs? And you actually might say, it's not actually too bad. I'll tell you why. 2 reasons. First of all, you're a B2C marketer. You're not like these poor B2B marketing people where you were an engineer, a salesperson, somebody tapped you on the shoulder and said, poof, you're a marketing guy or gal. You went to school, you went to one of these B schools and learned about B2C marketing. So that was pretty cool. You could pay people to do really fancy surveys and studies. But the other reason your insight isn't too bad is you use phones yourself. You're a C, man. You're a consumer. So, not too shabby here. Okay. Now, what about B2B? Oh my goodness. You make different ingredients that are used in paper production. Now, you make minerals, okay? You know all about minerals. But when your customer makes paper, how much do you know about that? Not very much. I mean, you didn't go to school to learn about paper production. You learned about mineral production. So your typical insight's fairly low. Now, how good can it get? Well, because consumers have low knowledge, interest, objectivity, foresight, and concentration isn't good, you can't learn very much. You're going to have to show them a prototype and do market studies and go into small markets first and do all that kind of stuff. However, because your B2B customers are really knowledgeable, they can explain the paper making process. They want you to understand. They want you to have ingredients that make their paper brighter and have better humidity resistance. And they want to explain these things to you. They can tell you, hey, cut my manpower here and improve my my rate of production here. So your potential insight's pretty darn high if you know how to ask them. So you guys see where I'm going, right? The insight gap. The potential that B2B producers have to get a competitive edge with this insight gap is much greater than B2C. If you're in B2C, it just means you might spend a little bit more money on multi-million-dollar market studies, third-party vendors, learning a little bit more about your customers' needs, and you're still going to cross your fingers. In B2B, you're going to end up with a market satisfaction gap and know exactly what customers want and why they want it. So the benefit of understanding customer needs is greater for a B2B company today when your competitors are not doing this well versus B2C. And probably better today than what they will be in 30 years if everybody's doing it. So I take a breath. Does that all make sense on why we're kind of hepped up about understanding B2B customer needs? Everybody good? Okay, so but with that, let's talk about 12 differences. Now, to get to that white paper, you can just go B2B versus B2C.com. Scott loves to get these cheap vanity URLs, don't you, Scott?
I do.
Or
it's like
was
a hobby of mine.
Or was it Adams? I get no end of abuse of all the vanity URLs I'm buying. At any rate, B2B versus B2C.com, download the white paper. But let me give you the essence of what's in that white paper. So let's go through the 12. Now, I talked about the first 5, so I'm going to make this kind of quick. The first 5, they understand their subject matter for the reasons we talked about. But what's the implication for you on this? Well, it means you ought to use voice of customer interviews to understand their needs in depth. There is the potential to do it, so let's go after it. They know a lot. I tell people discovery interviews are used when smart people want to talk to other people who are smarter about the subject matter that they're interested in. Now, the second one is interest. We already mentioned that consumers, they're not too interested. You got to pay them to come to a focus group. But your B2B customers, you can make them a hero at work. Now, that means they're willing to help us. So what is the implication? So you want to get enough time with them and with the right people. And here's the key. You got to figure out why they want what they want. They will tell you. They're passionate about this. They want to reduce the manpower. They want to increase the line speed. They want to cut down defects. They'll tell you why, but you need to know how to ask that and spend enough time doing that. That's where the what and why probing method come in. We also have the SALT probing method for digging deeper. So anyway, we won't cover that today, but that's the deal. Now, objectivity was the third one. They got these company procedures, group decisions, and so forth. So they kind of have to be rational. They're rational because they have to be. But what does this mean? The real essence of this implication is there are root causes that, you know, if you're doing consumer goods and, you know, they want a certain floral pattern, you could probe till the cows come home on why they like that floral pattern. I'm not sure they're going to be able to tell you. But here, they're going to be able to tell you what happens when they increase that line speed and what the next rate limiting step is and so forth. So you really want to go advanced probing, that one and why method, and get to the root causes of those desires. Now, Foresight, because they're in business to make money, they can tell you, as I mentioned, let's cut down my manpower, let's speed up my line speed and so forth. So what this means is you can get the economics. Now, you know, as you know, you don't want to say how much would you pay for this, but you want to say a lot of what would that do for you? How would that help you? And then they're going to be giving you information. And some good probing questions are how often, how long, how much. Try to remember those. How often, how long, how much. They're in the blue help section. Look under advanced probing questions or economic probing. Oh, really? You have some downtime that's causing maintenance. Well, how often do you have to do that? Okay, how often? And how long is the equipment normally down when you do that? Now, how many people have to work on that? How much, right? What's the cost, you know? Do you have to use new supplies when you're doing that? Replace your parts? How much? How much? So anyway, you want to do that kind of probing because they can tell you. And then the fifth one we talked about already was market concentration. So you just don't have as many customers. So this means that if you are in a highly concentrated B2B market, you want to engage a large percentage of the marketing buying power. So if you're going into automotive or there's only so many OEMs or aerospace, but it's Boeing and Airbus and it drops off fast, man, you can get a huge percentage of the market buying power. Now, you may be in B2B and you may be selling nail guns and there's tens of thousands of home buyers, and this may not be that helpful for you. But ask yourself, what's the mark? If I took my market segment and asked for the 10 largest potential buyers, what's the percentage of the market buying power they represent? If it starts going up to 30, 40, 50% or more, then you want to really focus on those people because you're going to be engaging them, priming them to buy your product later. Okay, those are the 5 we've talked about in the past. Hopefully it's a good refresher. Are you ready for the next 7? Because they all make a difference. Next one is market size. So many B2B products are needed to make a single B2C market. Here's my example. Let's say you're Apple and you're going to be launching the next iPhone. You're going to sell billions of dollars of iPhone. Now, let's say you make a little tiny gasket that goes in that iPhone. You might be selling millions or tens of millions of dollars of that gasket. So there's a whole bunch of B2B suppliers that are each selling millions or tens of millions of dollars, but the B2C guy is selling billions of dollars, or it could be hundreds of millions or something. So which one is going to be able to afford as much third-party market research as they want? It's Apple Computer, right? It's not you, because you're only going to be selling $5 million a year. What you need to do is learn how to be very cost effective and internally learn how to understand the voice of the customer. That's why we focus on B2B and we do very little project work for people because I was gonna say they're too cheap in B2B. No, in B2B, they need to learn how to do it themselves. Okay, so that's one difference. Second, decision makers. So the B2B purchasing decision often involve multiple people, which some people think is a disadvantage for B2B. I don't consider it a disadvantage. It just means we have to do it a little bit differently. Where B2C VOC experts say interview everybody individually, we say, no, you want to interview them simultaneously. Let them debate an issue because you'll learn so much as they are naturally debating. You'll capture the natural decision making. So that's why we want to see you have multiple people on the other end of the interview, especially for preference, but even for discovery. Number 8, value chain. You know this one had to be coming, right? B2C, it's just the person with the purse or the wallet. You got to convince them. But here, you need to go down the value chain in many cases to not just your customer, but your customer's customer and maybe your customer's customer's customer. And find out who in the value chain is really turning the crank, right? There's a drive sprocket on your bike. That's the one that drives the rest of the chain. Somebody in that value chain is driving the decision. It may be the OEM 2 or 3 levels down. It may be your direct customer. You need to figure out who that is. Interview all of them, but really focus your design on the one that's driving things. Number 7, sales cycle. So B2B buyers take forever to make a decision because they're making usually pretty large decisions. B2C buyers might get the pack of gum on the checkout line on the way out, right? Now, what does this mean? It actually has a very serious implication that most people overlook. It means this: if you do not engage your customers in the front end of innovation during the development stage, and you go, ta-da, we just launched a product, here it is, expect long evaluation times, right? Because they're working on something else. Maybe 3 months later, they can start to get samples, and then they'll start getting serious, and so on and so forth. Well, what you want to do is engage your customers all during your development. Engage them in the interviews in the front end. Let them see some prototypes. Have conversations with side-by-side testing. Let them see more prototypes. Give them free samples. You engage them. Let them know when the launch will be. Now, instead of saying, give me 3 or 4 months before I can start evaluating it, they start evaluating it right away. I hear a lot of people say we want to accelerate time to market. I don't really care that much about time to market. I care a great deal about time to money. Time to money is when they start evaluating and buying your product. And so the sales cycle tells you you need to engage them early. Number 10, the purchase commitment. As you know, B2C customers, B2B customers often sign really big contracts worth a lot of money. You could have a B2C kind of big, buying a car or something, but most of the time, it's not as big a deal. So because you're putting a lot of money on the line, you want to design products that help customers make or save real money. So you want to make sure you understand the economic factors, build a value calculator, and then promote your product with content marketing, where you're teaching them something, but it's fact-based. It's here's how you can save money. I had a client once that made paint, and he made some paint that went to Home Depot and sold to consumers, and he sold some paint that went to contractors. Basically, his budget went like this. For consumers, he spent very little money until he launched phase, and he spent all his money launching it. For B2B, the contractors, he spent a lot of money in development because he had to make a paint that really worked well because these people are in business. Anyway, that's what you want to think about when it comes to purchase commitment. Now, what about pricing decisions? So the nice thing about B2C is you can do point-in-time surveys that will help you understand price decisions. Van Westendorp is one. You ask these questions about at what point would it seem too cheap? At what point would it seem too expensive? It's pretty nice. They'll give you the answer. Just kind of falls out. Here's what your price should be. It's not so easy for B2B. Here, instead of understanding their price decisions, we need to understand their price decision making. Now, what this means is you can't ask them, what would you pay? But you can gather economic data, build up a value calculator, come up with a model. In general, if you're going to save the customers $1 million a year, you're going to probably hold back 30 to 40% of that by higher pricing, and they get the rest of the benefit. But you can calculate these things and model their price decision making. Now, the bad news for B2B is it's not as simple and straightforward as a pricing survey like Van Westendorp. The good news is once you model it, you can have all kinds of what-if product designs and put them in your model. With the Van Westendorp, if you have a new thing you'd like to find pricing, you got to start the survey all over again. And they're not cheap to do. Finally, supplier insight. How much do we know about this? Well, we don't know very much. We know a lot about our minerals. We know very little bit about the paper manufacturing. And you're saying, well, Dan, that's a difference. Is that actually an advantage? Well, it could be. It could be because your competitors are probably in the same boat. They don't know much about paper manufacturing or whatever your market is. That means you could have an enormous competitive advantage if you will learn how to understand customer insight before they learn how to do it. So those are the 12 there. Now I'm going to take a breath Any questions on those 12? I think many of you had seen the first 5 before, but hopefully there were some new ones in there on the 12. Scott and Dan had just too much time on our hands, right, Scott?
Yeah.
All right. So with that, then let me keep moving. So you get the theme here, right? I was so subtle about this, right? But the theme is we need to understand these customer needs in the front end, and interviews are the way we do it. And so, you can use qualitative interviews, get those outcomes, and you can use quantitative preference interviews and figure out which ones are important and not being satisfied. And this helps you diverge and then converge. And you are stopping areas of omission, failing to uncover unarticulated needs here. And you're stopping areas of commission here, stopping, picking the wrong thing to work on, right? So that's what we're doing. Now, here's what gets just a little tricky. I keep talking about B2B versus B2C. So let me ask you, if I worked in the office with you and you said, Adams, would you go out and get a new paper stapler? Would that be a B2B or a B2C purchase? Well, technically it'd be a B2B purchase, right? I mean, it's for the office, right? However, I think we would all agree that my knowledge about staplers, my interest in staplers, my objectivity in finding the finest stapler is pretty darn low, right? So here we are. Wait a minute, Dan, it's B2B, but you're saying we have low knowledge, interest, and objectivity. Yeah, I'm afraid so. Now, you're going to go buy a car. You've been shopping for a long time. You've been telling your spouse for some time you need a certain model that just happens to be very sporty. Now, what's your knowledge about that sports car? Are you interested in it? Are you at least objective in terms of, 0 to 60 and the amount of time it takes and things like this? Yeah. So wait a minute, Dan, that's a B2C. You're saying maybe the knowledge, interest, and objectivity is higher in B2C than B2B? Whoa, what do we do with this? Well, we come up with something called the B2B Index. We developed this years ago. Probably not as many people use this as we should encourage to use it. But what you do is you basically measure your knowledge, interest, objectivity, foresight. The software does it for you. We've got a website. And it might come back that that dress belt has a really low B2B index. You see each one of these is measured separately. They're added up. We got a whopping 17. But the conveyor belt, if you add up all 5 of those, man, that's an 84. That is one high B2B index. And all it means is this. If you have a high B2B index, you have a lot of engagement potential. You can engage your customers in understanding their needs. You can actually engage your customers in selling your product too. And I want to come to that in a minute. So what have we done? We've got this index to help you avoid some really dumb mistakes. And I won't go into them now, but we've had B2B companies try to do Van Westendorp, and it wasn't the right tool to use. And we've had people try to apply lean startup and forget to interview their customers before the build cycle started, which didn't make any sense. So you can avoid these dumb errors by taking the B2B index and finding out how B2B your market is. You'll answer some questions in here. How much training does it take your customers to do their jobs well? How much time do they spend on this thing? And then you'll download a report. And you go, well, where do those titles come? Well, you actually said, my market is adhesives for flexible frozen food packaging. And so you'll download a 20-page report, and it'll have some pretty cool stuff in it. It'll have your B2B index, and it will have some recommendations for early stage marketing and late stage marketing. Now, what do I mean by that? So years ago, when I worked inside a corporation, somebody said, Dan, what do you guys in marketing do anyway? Anybody else ever had that question? So here's what I started doing. I said, well, there's early stage marketing where you figure out what the customers want. And there's late stage marketing when you actually deliver, the new product to them. And they go, okay. And at least they stop bothering me. I don't know if it worked or not. But so now I think about early stage marketing, late stage marketing. So this downloadable PDF will tell you what to do for your market. So I'm going to go in a minute and show you that B2B index and how that works. First, before I do, that's the last thing I'm going to do. Any questions on anything so far that we covered? Everybody still good? Okay, let's do this. Let's jump out to the website. And we are out in the main website here. And services are stuff we charge you for. Growth tools are all free, okay? So if I go down here, B2B Market View with B2B Index, and click on that, you can do this as many times as you want for as many markets as you want. In fact, here's some examples of the bad decisions that you can, not have if you use this tool. You might find this kind of interesting. Anyway, let's come back here. And so what we've done is you can download this sample of the PDF report I'm going to show you. There are the early stage and late stage marketing tasks that it's going to help you with. And what you're going to do is you're going to go in here and you're going to answer 17 questions about your target market. Excuse me. You'll be able to review your index score. Then you'll see another little chart here. It's kind of cool. I won't go into all that. And then you'll be able to download your market view report. Now, we don't have time for me to do this now, but it's pretty simple. I doubt it would take you even 10 minutes to do this for market. And so here's a sample of what you would get. So I won't go into all this. I think it's 20 pages or so, but it's going to cover a little bit of background so you know what this is all about. It's going to tell you how to use this and so forth. But then this is the fun part. You get to the recommendation section. So let's zoom in here. Well, you can see there's a whole bunch of early stage marketing sections, and there's a whole bunch of late stage marketing sections. I think there's, 15 of these in total, I think, okay? So let's go into one of these. Let's just go into this one, uncover market needs. I'll just zoom this up a little bit. I'll just do this one here. So this is market research, and here's a little bit of information on market research. Now, here's the cool thing. These recommendations right here, they were based upon how you answered the question about your market position and your knowledge. Down here, this recommendation section was based upon how you answered questions about your customer's knowledge and your customer's interest. And you can see they keep changing. So what we found, this is really cool. We discovered this a few years ago. There were generally two drivers that really determined how you should deal with this particular marketing task. So these recommendations are dialed in for your specific data entry. What that means is there's over 10,000 combinations of this market research report, all tuned to how you answer the questions. So check this out when you get a chance. If you've got 5 different market segments, do it 5 different times, and you'll have a different market report, probably different color on the thing. It's kind of cool, and it will give you some great guidance on how to pursue your market. So any questions at all on the B2B Market View report, the B2B Index, anything else? Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing now. That was the first half hour. And, I'd love to get some feedback. Was that like, oh my goodness, that was way too much theory, Dan? So any feedback would be welcome. But also, let's have any questions. If you have some questions that come up on the B2B versus B2C index, we'll take those. But also, if you've got any questions on anything in general, we'd like to leave a half hour for that as well. So let me be quiet for a few seconds here and see if there's any questions.
Good morning, Dan. This is Tony. I wanted to ask a question regarding the B2B index.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an individual effort where I calculate the B2B index on my own, or is that something you do as a team? Or is that something you do with, an outside?
I love that. I love that question, Tony. Our preference is as a team. Our preference is to have your team think about this together, because it's kind of an educational process. And they're kind of evaluating. Some may have more information than others. And then when you download the PDF, just distribute it to your teammates. And you can even use it like a bit of a roadmap. Hey, we're ready to launch our product. What tools would be very good for online launch? Or we need to make some pricing decisions. What should we use as guidelines for pricing? So I love to see it used for the whole team, frankly. Good question, Tony. Other questions or observations? All right. Any general questions also? Boy, I was doing an interview last week and this didn't work out well at all. Or this really worked out well and you ought to know about it, Adams. Any general questions? Let's do this, Scott. Let's talk about what's coming up next week then. And we'll just do one last call for questions. So next week we come out here. Oh, I got to share my screen again. I'm not doing it. Come on, Dan. Pay attention. Share my screen. Here we go. And let's come out to training, blueprint training, Monday masterclass. I don't know what it is. I won't try to guess, Scott. We'll see if it's your turn in the barrel or mine. Let's see what we got.
I know what it is.
Do you? Oh, it's your turn in the barrel.
Yeah.
Scott is an absolute pro at job maps. So you guys know we have an outcome map, but it also, with some slight modifications, can be a job map. It's incredibly powerful, not just to be used as a trigger map. I won't spill the beans on it, but Scott is our expert on this, a world expert on this. So join us next time. If this was too heavy on the theory, this will be too practical. No, not too practical. This will be really roll up your sleeves, something you can all put to good use. All right. Any last questions anybody has before you either start or finish your Mondays, depending upon your region? Great. Well, as always, we really appreciate you joining us. Oh, Scott, the What's New. So we got these What's New workshops coming up. Do you want to say a word about them? Because they may want to spread this around at their company a little bit.
Yeah, everybody here certainly should have gotten an email about what's new. I hesitate to list the dates off the top of my head, but we have 3 different sessions, so you should have, multiple opportunities. And yeah, that would certainly be, so you should have all gotten the email, and certainly feel free to send that around to any other practitioners or really any folks in your company who might have an interest in blueprinting. Of course, folks that have been through the training will have a little easier time of it, but it's going to be a similar format to this, 30 minutes. We're going to keep it pretty short. But there would be 3 sessions over the next month or so.
And I think the point is, in the last year to year and a half, so much has come together. Some of it just in the last couple of months, that a lot of our clients, we just haven't kept up with them on what's new. So if you've got some folks back at the home office, look for that email. Or if you can't find it, there'll be more coming out, I think. Let Scott or me know, and we'd love to have you join us.
Yeah, there's one email coming out today. It's being processed, or maybe it's coming out tomorrow. So the sessions are June 14th, June 17th, and June 28th. And the times vary these are Eastern times, from 10 or 11 a.m. So okay. June 14th, June 17th, and June 28th. And you should all get an email tomorrow. And if you're not getting one, let me know. That would be surprising to me if you didn't.
Bring your friends and family. We'll look forward to seeing you there. Okay, everybody, we'll let you get on with your Monday. Thanks again for joining us. Have a good one.